Hey, welcome back to the Basketball Give and Go podcast. We have our first ever guest with us, none other than the Steve Lucas. For all of you who don't know, I am now equaled out Conneaut Valley to Conneaut Valley to Conneaut Lake to Conneaut Lake here. So Steve went to high school with me at Conneaut Valley and actually played against these two birds. 1,000-point scorer, grew up a couple houses down from me. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about your basketball background.
Yes, sir. Born and raised, big into a basketball family because of my dad. To this day, die hard. He's retired. All he does is watch NBA and plays FanDuel and DraftKings and makes his lineups, and that's about it. I grew up in Edinburgh area, moved to Conneaut Valley when I was in 8th grade, which is probably about the time I met you and your brother.
Yep.
Had a pretty successful high school career. Had a lot of fun doing it. Played against these two clowns, Ben and Ryan. Obviously the first and only love sports-wise. You know, I played other sports, but basketball was it. Ended up, like I said, had a successful high school career. Had the opportunity to play Division III basketball in Pittsburgh at LaRoche College, which is now LaRoche University. Had a pretty decent, successful career there too. Played 4 years. Started my freshman and sophomore year. Coincidentally, didn't start my junior and senior year, but averaged more minutes those 2 years than when I did start. So wasn't hating it.
Six man.
Yes, sir. But yeah, big Tar Heel fan, as you can see. Me and Mike just shared our birthday last week.
Nice.
Week and a half ago. Yeah, I mean, it's first love, only love. NBA, college, high school, doesn't matter. I sit and watch high school games here at home, online. Due to COVID, still watch college basketball. NBA, I grind. I buy the NBA League Pass, follow all of it. Stat guy, player guy, anti-LeBron guy, but that's topic for another day. But yeah, so here we are, and I appreciate you guys for having me on. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, no problem. So earlier in this episode, Ben gave us his definition of what classifies a rivalry. So Ben, go ahead and rehash that real quick.
Yeah, so just at a high level, good teams, consistency of players, and I'm going to modify that a little bit when we talk about college and high school. Important games in the NBA, that's usually playoff series. In college and high school, because there's so fewer games, games take on more importance. So I think that's modified a little bit as well. And then both teams having won or having a realistic chance to win year to year. So in high school, the way I'd modify it in college as well is locality matters even more than I think it does in a professional game. I think player consistency matters slightly less, though I think it's still important. Like, for instance, when you had 4-year players like the J.J. Redicks, the meaningfulness of those rivalry games went up. And then I'd also say, because it matters less in the sense that, like, you're rooting for your hometown team a lot more in high school and college too. So, like, when we're talking about, like, when we played in high school, when it's one town over, the game takes on a large meaning to you. Yes. And it doesn't necessarily matter as much as if you were both really great teams or anything like that, because it's high school. Yeah. And then for college, it still matters that the teams are good. And I think that's where we're going to be segueing to. But, like, the classic college rivalry is, like, the two really good teams from the same conference or the same local area playing each other twice, 3 times, 4 times a year.
I think one more variable in the college thing is coaches.
Yeah.
Sometimes coaching gets the marquee, where an NBA game, if it's, it's Nets versus Mavs right now, it's Luka Harden on the thing. You might see the promo for a college game, and it could be Roy Williams, Coach K as the two prominent figures, because they're always there. They don't go anywhere like the players. So I think coaches have a big role in it.
And that's the perfect segue into what we're going to start talking about college rivalries, because when you think college rivalries, there's really only one that stands out above the rest, because this is one of, like, the top rivalries of all time, no matter what sport you're talking about. and that's Duke, North Carolina, and we have Steve here, who's a huge Tar Heel fan, and Steve, you and I had some fun growing up with the Tar Heels, talking about them and dishing out on that a little bit, and some could argue, Tim, some could argue that I probably should have brought a Duke fan on to talk about Duke, North Carolina, but that's just not my style, because I don't want to hear about that stuff.
I'll probably pretend to be a Duke fan for this one just to go the other side, but like one of the great marks of a true rivalry, and we said this with the NBA, is when you have an opinion about it, even when it's not one of your teams, right? So like Duke, North Carolina, like a lot of people, like you'll see this, people aren't necessarily a big fan of either team, but they pick one because they gravitate towards, either North Carolina's brand or a Duke brand, right? This is probably the best one, but there's other great college rivalries as well. But like in terms of just people having an opinion, just because Duke versus North Carolina, I think is.
So I just have to make this real quick note, and I'll stay under 5 seconds. But you could probably all see that the camera is going crazy right now on my end of things, and that's because Dean and Roy both came over here and they started bumping my table up a little bit. So I think they heard us talking about Dean and Roy and got a little excited. But anyways. I have the all-time stat right here coming up here. So North Carolina is actually winning the overall series 140-114. Now, if you go back into the history of this, when the colleges kind of first started playing each other in the 20s, North Carolina in the 20s and 30s, and I think even up until the 40s, just completely dominated that series. But when you look in terms of when Roy took over in 2003, Mike Krzyzewski actually has the leg up by 5 games. It's 23-18. So
now does this change when Coach K becomes Duke's coach? Like, is it really more even since then, or even slightly Duke's favored?
I'll be honest with you. I tried to look for that and I haven't found it yet, but I'm sure that it does. I think it does tilt slightly into, and the one stat I did find is that since – oh no, maybe I think that was still actually. Let me look it up. But anyways,
even like a month ago when they played, they pulled up. It was like the last 200-ish, maybe a little slightly over 200
score differential.
Duke had like 2 more wins, and the score differential was like 5 points going into the like the total.
Yeah. It was it's super close, and I can remember. I think it was like 1 or 2 years ago, or it might have even been before the first Zion Williamson game, but the points were actually tied at one point, which was really interesting, and that just kind of shows the power of this one. But I have it pulled up here on my iPad, and I'm trying to find it, but I'm terrible with technology.
Because we got so many North Carolina fans here, I want to just flip the script on it real quick on moderation duties and ask this question from the 3 of you guys: who would you say is the Duke player you hated the most?
Well, that's an easy one for me.
Okay.
There's even a 30 for 30 on it. I hate Christian Laettner.
Okay.
And besides that too, I hate JJ Redick, and probably because he's just so good. I mean, he could just shoot lights out, and I hate it when he'd pull up from the Coach K logo. That just made me mad. But go ahead, other guys.
Steve, go ahead.
What's crazy for me, and this is going to be the unpopular opinion, but I think my least favorite Dookie of all time was Shane Battier. And I think partially because he did all the right things, so it made me dislike him even more.
Did you dislike his head shape? Did it bother you when he had like, the creases through his head?
Yeah, his rolls in the back and everything. But honestly, I think I disliked him so much because he did everything the right way. He was constantly taking charge. He was a leader. Like he was a dude that like I would envy if I had him on my team, but because I didn't, I'm like, nah, forget this dude.
I have, and I don't know if I can pick one. Shane Battier is probably the top, but the little white dudes that hit the floor were all like, so Steve Wojciechowski was like top 3. Like I was in elementary and just wanted to punch him in his face. What's his name? John Shire was super annoying to me. I hated
Paulson,
JJ.
Right? The guy that played with JJ, the point guard for JJ.
Greg Paulson.
Yeah, but I mean,
that one was okay.
He was so irrelevant. Yeah, he was.
Danny Green dunked all over him. So I was
going to say on that team it'd be Gerald Henderson.
Yeah,
but I kind of agree with Steve. Shane Battier for me because he he always made the defensive or offensive play when they needed it. He always was the team guy, did everything right. Yeah. They always seemed to win. He was just so annoying.
Now, to flip the script on this question for all you guys now, which Duke player did you actually kind of like, even though he was on Duke? If there is one.
To this day, I'm a huge JJ fan.
Yeah, you liked how he played with the cockiness.
His podcast, his love of watches.
But did you love him at Duke or just since Duke?
I didn't love him. Obviously, I disliked him.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was like, this dude's hated so much, and he's embracing it that I'm like, that's okay with me. Like I would, you know what I mean? I was envious of how much people disliked him. He just soaked it in and just won and just did his thing.
Yeah.
So that's, for me, it's JJ.
For me, it's Jay Will.
He was nice.
He was so nasty in college. Probably the best college guard that I'd seen in my lifetime at the time. Like,
and then he got in the motorcycle accident when he got into the pros.
Right.
He never really had.
But he could dunk on you. He could cross you over. He could pass it, shoot it. I mean, he could literally do no wrong on the court. And he was he was just so good. That's probably my only one in real time that I did not dislike.
I see, and I liked Boozer, and he was tough. He was solid, and he pushed around those.
He also allowed them to play that 4-out, 1-in with Dunleavy and Battier and Jay Will and Duhon and all those guys to shoot, and he just held down the paint. They were really good.
I would have expected Mitch to go with Trajan Langdon since he was a Cavs homer.
Oh yeah.
What about Zion? what about Zion though? As a recent guy, did you guys enjoy watching that? Because I thought that was pretty awesome.
Okay, he only really played. Go ahead, Steele.
Well, I see. I don't know how they feel, but as I get older, I don't hate Duke as much as I did when I was a kid, because I do feel a little weird being a grown adult hating on teenagers.
Hating on 18,
when I was a teenager, it was cool because they were older than me. I didn't really care. Yeah. Now I haven't really disliked a Duke player in a while. Like, I mean, I root against them. I will never root for them, but I really don't dislike any other players anymore too much.
Yeah. And then other than the conference tourney game, he really didn't play. He didn't really play that much against North Carolina because he hurt his knee and blew out the shoe in that game one and went the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game, and then he was out for the second game that season. So I don't have much hate towards Zion. I kind of like Steele. The older I get and the more into coaching I get with basketball, the more respect I have for Duke and just how well they're coached and the type of players that go there. So
and here's a question, maybe segues into some of the other rivalries too. But do you feel like the quality of the rivalry changes or has changed due to players not staying as long?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So like if you look, like I jotted down some of my favorite UNC Duke games, like the best ones I remember watching. And in a lot of these, you got guys that played against each other 2-3 years in a row. You got like the 05 series when the UNC had May, McCants, and Felton, and Duke had Sheldon Williams and JJ and a few other guys, but they played year in, year out.
Right.
Now a couple pieces like Luol Deng might have left a year early, but for the most part, them cores play each other year after year after year. And then, our colleges are, 7 miles apart. Right. We play summer against each other too. I think that's what's lacking now.
6 to 8 matchups against each other.
You don't get those. Even those player matchup rivalries with McCants versus JJ or Sheldon versus May, or even, there's more throughout even Coda and Wojo from the late 90s. Like, there's just so many rivalries and matchups you don't get now.
Yeah. Just to get away from Duke, North Carolina, a little bit here. Do you guys have any other favorite college rivalries that stand out? For me, it's the Battle of Kentucky with Louisville and Kentucky. They usually can put out some pretty good games. But Steele, I know you had a good one.
Well, for me, Louisville, Kentucky is not a big one for me because I can't think of memorable games that I would call on. I kind of harken back to the old Big East in some of those, late 90s, early 2000s when I was growing up, some UConn, Syracuse, when they were perennial powers, some Georgetown, Syracuse teams.
I even remember real briefly when Pitt was decent and Pitt UConn was like hardcore.
Pitt UConn
like
was
DeJuan
good.
Blair against Hashim Thabit.
Yeah, Pitt Villanova was good. I mean, there was a lot of parity in that Big East Conference, and they all seem to be rivals at one point or the other.
I agree with that. And then, there was also two of the coolest college basketball runs I remember when we were I believe in college, but it might have been right after, was one the Jerry McNamara year where he just ran through everybody with kind of a not great Syracuse team and won the Big East tournament, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And then Kemba doing it the whole freaking national tournament with a UConn team as well.
Gary McGee still hasn't gotten up.
Yeah, he got crossover.
Still there.
Yeah.
Just a fun fact, Jerry McNamara actually is from Pennsylvania. He was from the Scranton area, and actually I think he's like top 5 PA all-time scoring. Like he has over 3,000 points and stuff. But anyways, now we're gonna kind of transition into some high school stuff and just that passion that high school players have for each other, and that's kind of why we. We've talked about this before. When the camera is not rolling, Ben and Ryan and I will just hang out on the camera and just talk for a long time, usually after we're done recording. And so last week we started talking about their senior night, which was against us at Conneaut Valley. So just a little background is our school district growing up had 3 extremely small schools. I graduated with 52 people. Steve, your graduating class wasn't much bigger than ours. And same with Conneaut Lake. You guys probably had what, like 60, 70 in class?
Maybe 60 some.
I think it might have been 70 max when I was
yeah.
So that was our school district. So there's three towns. There are 3 schools: Conneaut Valley, Lionsville, Conneaut Lake, and they were all within 10 miles of each other. It forms a small triangle. And it was our school district, which now we've consolidated and formed one school. So back in the day, we had there's some pretty big rivalries because you're playing inter-district and, it was like your neighboring schools. So you guys had a great, and I was younger. I didn't play so much. I was the guy who our coach Scott sent in to foul people. So, he'd call me up because I was a sophomore when these guys were seniors. So I would just go and foul and hack everybody and run people down and tackle them when they went to dunk on me. But so I thought your guys' senior night story was real fun because I know that go ahead. You guys can just tell the story. You guys know it better than I do.
Well, just to preface it slightly, like Steve, Steele, and I are all the same age. And then, just to get a kind of a sense of it, like, you guys knew each other from like baseball growing up and stuff, like played against each other doing that. I remember a lot of times going over to what was called Lord Mason Park in Conneautville and playing with Steve and Tyler Matera and a few other guys from Conneaut Valley during the summers. Just because, like, they were really good ball players. I enjoyed playing with them. So, there's a lot of like interactions like that. But with senior night in particular, what was interesting from my perspective is our team had I guess you'd call it big 3. I don't know, Steele, Kelso, and I, they all averaged over double digits or whatever. But that night, it was just me. And then Steve's team was, Steve was really good. Steve was an awesome high school basketball player, and he had his own big 3, if you will. And I think we ended up losing in a close game. But it was the only time I think I ever lost my temper playing high school basketball. And I was going to see if Steve even remember this, but I actually tried to punch one of the players from Conneaut Valley named Jeff Bishop during the middle of the game.
I definitely remember it. I don't know that I would blame you, but but I mean, for me, like the situation was super unique. Because like Mitch prefaced on real quick, we, 3 schools all within 10 minutes of each other, small schools, everybody pretty much knows everybody from each school. But it's funny for me, and I can't speak on both of you, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, it was funny because, so obviously, Lionsville and Conneaut Lake were both rivals of us. The difference to me was like, Coney Lake, I was like friends and close with a lot of you guys, like both you and Steele and Kelso and several others, John Holland. Like, you know, we'd play during the summers, we'd hoop together, we'd joke around, hang out. So like for me, it was fun to play you guys. Like I wanted to beat you every single time.
Right.
But it was like you'd look forward to that. Me with Linesville was like the exact opposite. Like I didn't know any of those cats. I didn't hang out with any of them. So I just wanted to beat them because I didn't like them. You know what I mean? So it was like a two-stage rivalry type deal. But you know, both got me up ready to go, but for two different reasons, if that makes sense.
And actually, I think we all said this. Like, I think everybody feels like Linesville is their big old rival. Just for the hatred purposes, if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I totally agree with that. It's almost like how we talked earlier in the podcast about Heat Spurs rivalry in the 2010s, where it was more respect-based rivalry, and like I respected his skill. You know, I wanted to beat him, but I didn't hate him. I couldn't hate him. That's my homie. With Linesville, it was I don't like him. I want to beat him. I want to tell him when I'm beating him, and we might have to fight after the game. Basically, like that was the difference. Like I hated them, and I really liked. You know, I mean, like I said, me and Steve were friends since junior high when I met him playing baseball, and we would play in the summers, hang out and stuff. Yeah. So that was like, for me with him, it was always like a personal maybe rivalry. Like I wanted to like, you know, get him this time, but it wasn't, I didn't hate them at all.
And I think that's a great explanation. Cause like when we played Valley, you know, I really like Steve and Tyler and those guys. Like, and if they beat us, like, you know, I wouldn't be mad about it in a sense because they were really good. And I liked watching them play. I was still like, if we lost to Linesville, I'd be so mad, especially if I got like outplayed by one of their players. Cause I was low key jealous. Like, I'm still mad about the fact, and I hope he's watching because I haven't heard from him in years, but like that Sean Kirby scored 1,000 points and I didn't, because I still feel like to this day I was always better than him at basketball. But I liked him; he's a good guy, he's a good basketball player. But it makes me really mad that he got 1,000 points and I didn't.
And I think that's something that can be said too, is that when you know, if you really look at what a rivalry consists of, I mean all four of us have brothers, and I think my greatest rivalry of all time is against my brother, you know, and in anything. And to this day, him and I are like, we're best friends. He was best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his wedding. But like we can't, like, I remember him swearing in front of my grandma because I was beating him in Words with Friends so bad, you know, and he was, you know, and so, you know, I think there's something to be said about that. You know, you have the love rivalries and then the hate rivalries type of things where, you know, you're playing against someone you just love so much, but you just want to beat them, you know, and same with hate. Steve, real quick, with you playing at La Roche, was there any difference between, a college rivalry and the high school rivalry? Was there one that you preferred, or was there any difference? For me personally, and I'd never played college sports in my life, and you know, so for me, high school rivalries were awesome because, you know, you had the super fans, that, you know, you had packed gyms. Was it the same in college, or was it?
So my situation was kind of unique. So I went to La Roche, and our rival just in general was Penn State Barron, which is out of Erie, which is actually where I was born and somewhat raised. My older brother actually played for Penn State Barron. My younger brother went to Penn State Barron. I was supposed to go to Penn State Barron. I was like, no, I want to get out of Erie, and ended up going to La Roche, which is in Pittsburgh. Right. So taking like a regular rivalry made it a little bit more intense for me because like my whole family went there. Everybody went there. They were already rival. I'm like, no, I'm going to go down here. So it was a lot of fun. It was different. It was almost more like a high school rivalry for me because the people that did go to Barron, most of the guys that did play for Barron were people that I knew like prior to college, like
Tommy.
local. Yeah, exactly. Like I was supposed to room with Tommy. Like what if I was going to go to Barron? So
and he was nice too. He was a good basketball
player. For sure.
He was a real good basketball player. Yeah, he was a real good basketball player.
And so it made it even more fun for me because it was like the same thing playing Coney Lake. Like I knew all these guys. Like my 21st birthday, we played in Erie against Penn State Barron, And I stayed around with my family instead of going back to Pittsburgh. So I go out to dinner, and I ended up partying with all the Barron guys all night. Like after playing against my rival, I stayed near and hung out with them. So it was, like I said, it was different, but I feel like most rivalries are probably like that. Like Ben touched on earlier, even college rivalries are still like locality based. Like Pitt and WVU, they hate each other because they know each other. And like in the off season, there's, you know, pro-am leagues in Pittsburgh that all the WVU guys are playing in, all the Pitt guys are playing in. Louisville and Kentucky, they're 45 minutes away, Lexington, Louisville. So I think it's still locality based a little bit. Like I said, mine was smaller scale, Division III NCAA basketball, but still, like, you get more up for those games than any other ones for sure.
Yeah, whenever you're playing for who's the best in the state or the town or whatever, I think it just ups it a little bit. And it's kind of funny because, like, Steele, Mitch, and I have all coached at Cash since it's consolidated. And a little bit of the interest level in high school basketball has gone down, interestingly, since that consolidation. And I think part of it's because we've lost the best of our small area feel, right? Because we're all on one team now. So like what we used to be packed games for Lionsville versus Lake or Valley Lake or Valley Lionsville, now we don't really have a natural rival anymore. The only close one's Meadville, but Meadville's been so great in the last whatever amount of years since Conneaut's consolidated that we can't match them at basketball. We match them at football, and that's a true rivalry. But like basketball, they've been so much better since the consolidation of the schools that it hasn't really become a rivalry, and there's really not enough interest for the fans in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. They don't know how to adjust. They're like, how do we get up? How do we get up for who's our rival? How do you adapt a rival? Shout out Coach McElhaney, by the way.
Yes.
Linesville guy.
Yeah, no doubt. And actually, the funny thing is, he actually coached at Conneaut Valley for a couple years in the late 90s, I think it was, right after he got out of college. But
you know, and Steele and I briefly talked about this, and I think it'd be a fun thing to talk about for us, thinking about how we were rivals. But if we would have consolidated when we were in school, would we have been really good, or would it have been still been rough because we would have had to play General McLean?
Well, I'm going to let you guys take this one, because just as a disclaimer, if we would have consolidated back when we were in high school, there is no way I was ever making a basketball team. So I'm going to bow out of this one and let you guys who had actually been on that answer that. And this can be our closing thoughts. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't know. We're definitely gonna be biased because it was us.
Yeah.
But I mean, I look now at what a 4A team has, and I'm just knowing, you know, we played certain 3A, 4A teams randomly throughout our high school careers in non-conference games. And while we might get smoked by that team, I never thought it was because they had one individual player that was just so much better than us. They just had a bunch of them that were good. Where but if we would have all been together and we had our big three, their big three, and the three best players from now, you have 8 or 9 kids who are all really good and actually, you know, want to win and care to win.
Yeah.
I think we compete. I don't know. I mean, that's my opinion.
Well, I particularly want to hear Steve's thoughts, because he knows what those Erie County teams like McLean were like back then, because they were really freaking good too. Would we have been able to hang with them, or would we have been a mismatch?
I was going to say, so my thoughts on this are, I wanted it to happen the worst way. So I mean, I grew up in Edinburgh, went to General McLean until I was in 8th grade, and then moved to Conneaut Valley. With that being, those General McLean teams were juggernauts. Our junior and senior year, they were still good and they still won and made playoffs, but they weren't as good as they were a few years prior and a couple years after.
Yeah, a couple years after, they're even better.
My senior year, General McLean won state championship.
I was going to say Astorino and Bobby Stauffer and all them, like they were nice. With that being said, part of my thought was this was prior to the reclassification. So it was single, double, triple, quad. General McLean was triple. My class when I was at General McLean was like 260, 270. My class at Conneaut Valley was like 55.
Oh, so we might have been double still.
So that's part of the thing is, would we have been big double or small triple? and that would make a huge difference because if we were big double, we'd roll through everybody.
We would have been able to beat all the old FCBC.
100%. Like we would have been playing like Union City and teams like that, roll through them. Small triple, that's a different, because then we're playing. Well, even Harbor Creek back in the day wasn't that good, but
how about like a Girard? Would we be able to be like a Girard or one of these teams?
They were double. They were double.
They were double
at those times. They were like a big double. But it was like McLean, Franklin, like there was some good schools, Oil City.
Who's the good basketball player from Franklin? He actually went to the NFL. Nate Byam. He was
older than us though. He was. Was he? I think I was a sophomore when he graduated.
All right. I'm off on my timeline then.
No, I actually think he was a year younger than us because shout out one of my best friends, Pat Kill, is his quarterback. Pat and I lived together for a couple of years in Pittsburgh. He lives in San Diego now, though.
That might be right, Steele, because I think Franklin won the state championship in like 06 or something like that.
Jude Erda.
Hey, somebody's got to look that up.
I'm pretty sure McLean and Franklin both won state championships.
I'll have to fact check it, but hey, we're running out of time here. So just real quick, closing thoughts. Ben, go ahead and start closing thoughts. We're running out of time.
I mean, we got to have Steve and more people on, man.
Yeah.
I'll come back whenever.
Yeah. Steele?
Closing thoughts. Again, had a great time doing this. Loved having Steve on. I mean, me and this dude talk pretty much every day. So business as usual, basically.
So Steve, I'll let you go ahead and then I'll finish it up. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate you guys having me. I'll come back whenever. I actually told Ryan earlier I was binge watching the first 3 episodes. YouTube's a saint because I can put it in 1.5 times speed because I like lose focus so I can like keep up to. But I was sitting here watching it on my computer, like not arguing, but I'm throwing in my own comments while you guys are talking topics and giving facts and stuff. I'm like, Rudy Gobert. He changes the whole game. Nobody can do anything in the paint against him. And
you're right. I agree with
whenever. I love me some basketball talk, so I'm down.
All right. Well, hey, Steve, thanks so much for joining us. And I do have to give a shout out to Steve here because I texted him last night. Came up with the idea to bring him on last night. So I sent him a text message and he was all about it. So Steve, yes, we'll definitely have to have you back on. This was a lot of fun. And we'll have to do some golfing sometime this summer.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So, hey, if you like what you're hearing, if you're digging our podcast, please hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. Hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, and then again, the giveandgo3@gmail.com. Email us any questions if you have any ideas. If you want to hear Ryan and Ben's thoughts on anything. This has been an episode 4. Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you all next week. Hi, this is Mitch Shreve with the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. If you like what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for all the latest updates on all of our postings and content. You can also email us at thegiveandgo3@gmail.com to ask us any questions or give us suggestions on what you'd like to hear about all things basketball. Thanks for tuning in.